The stars looked wrong through the viewport. Captain Daeho Kim had traveled this route 100 times and something felt different. The merchant vessel Eternal Dawn was 3 hours from New Seoul, carrying medicine and supplies for the colony world. Daeho checked his instruments again. Everything showed normal readings, but his gut told him otherwise. "Captain, I'm picking up strange energy signatures ahead," his communications officer called out. The young woman's voice carried concern. "They don't match any of our ships." Daeho leaned forward in his chair. New Seoul was humanity's most peaceful colony, a farming world with rolling green fields and crystal rivers. 4 million people called it home. His own cousin lived there with her 2 children. The planet had no military presence beyond a few orbital sensors. It didn't need any. "Try to raise the colony," Daeho ordered. "Let them know we're approaching." Static filled the bridge. The officer tried again. More static, then silence. "Sir, I can't get through. All channels are dead." A cold feeling spread through Daeho's chest. He pushed the engines harder. The Eternal Dawn wasn't built for speed, but he needed to see what was happening. As they cleared the debris field that marked New Seoul's outer system, the truth appeared on their screens. The planet was burning. Massive warships hung in orbit like predators over a kill. Their hulls were black and silver, marked with symbols Daeho recognized from diplomatic files. The Galactic Empire, their weapons fired in steady pulses, sending beams of pure energy down to the surface. Where the beams struck, the land turned to glass. "Oh God," someone whispered behind him. "The cities," Daeho couldn't speak. On the main display, he watched New Seoul die. The capital city, where 500,000 people lived and worked, glowed white-hot before collapsing into slag. The farming valleys where children played in fields of golden wheat became rivers of molten rock. The coastal settlements, the mountain towns, the research stations, all of them vanished under the bombardment. "Sir, we need to leave," his first officer said. "If they detect us, run a passive scan," Daeho interrupted. His voice sounded hollow in his own ears. "Find survivors. There have to be survivors." They searched for 3 hours while the Imperial ships continued their work. The Eternal Dawn stayed hidden in the shadow of New Seoul's moon, sensors reaching out desperately for any sign of life. They found nothing. No distress signals, no escape pods, no emergency beacons. 4,300,000 people. Gone. Daeho's communications officer managed to recover some transmission fragments from the planetary network. The recordings were brief and broken, but they told the story. The Imperial fleet had arrived without warning. Director Minji Park, who ran the colony's defense coordination, had sent out alerts, but there was nothing to defend with. The colony had sensors and shuttles, not weapons. One recording showed a classroom. A teacher named Hana gathered her students in the center of the room, holding them close as the walls began to glow from the heat outside. The transmission cut off before the end. Another showed a man in farming clothes. Young Ho Lee spoke quickly into his personal comm, trying to reach his wife on Mars. "Tell Boyoung I love her. Tell her the kids were brave. Tell her—" The signal dissolved into white noise. Daeho watched them all. Every fragment they could recover. Families holding each other. Workers trying to reach shelters that didn't exist. Parents recording final messages for children who lived on other worlds. The Empire hadn't targeted military installations or government buildings. They had simply erased everything. When the Imperial fleet finally departed, New Seoul was a dead world. The oceans boiled. The atmosphere burned with toxic clouds. The carefully terraformed paradise that took humanity 50 years to build was now a ball of cooling slag. Daeho transmitted everything back to Earth on the fastest quantum link. The images, the recordings, the sensor data showing how thoroughly the Empire had destroyed a defenseless world. Then he stayed in orbit documenting the crime scene. Someone needed to witness what happened here. 2 days later, a message arrived from the Galactic Empire. It was broadcast to every human colony, every ship, every station. Ambassador Hyun Choi received it first at Earth's diplomatic outpost, but the Empire made sure everyone heard it. The world you called New Seoul violated territorial boundaries established by galactic law. Your species was warned to withdraw from contested space. You did not comply. This is the price of defiance. Remove your colonies from all disputed sectors within 90 days, or we will remove them for you. This is your only warning. The message was cold and formal. It spoke of New Seoul like it was a problem that needed solving, not a world full of living people. 4 million lives meant nothing to the Empire. They were elder species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Humans were newcomers, barely 3 centuries into space travel. The Empire saw humanity as children playing with dangerous toys. Deho received new orders from Earth. Document everything, then return home. Do not engage Imperial forces. Do not provoke further response. The orders came with a personal message from Admiral Jiwan Han. Her sister had lived on New Sol. Come home. Deho, we'll need witnesses for what comes next. The Eternal Dawn began its long journey back to Earth. Behind them, New Sol's ruins continued to cool. In 1,000 years, the world might be habitable again. The scars would remain much longer. On Earth, humanity reacted in ways the Empire didn't expect. There were no immediate threats of war. No dramatic speeches about revenge. The news networks showed the recordings from New Sol, and people wept. They mourned. They built memorials. Then they went quiet. Ambassador Choi appeared before the Galactic Council. He delivered an apology. Humanity had overstepped boundaries it didn't fully understand. The colonies would withdraw from disputed space. Earth wanted peace, not conflict. The Empire's elder species nodded with satisfaction. The upstart humans had learned their lesson. But on Earth, in bunkers deep below the surface, different conversations were happening. Admiral Han activated protocols written by paranoid strategists decades ago. Protocols designed for the worst possible scenario, total war against a superior enemy. Scientists received unlimited funding for projects previously considered too extreme, too costly, too dangerous. Intelligence officers began moving pieces into position across the galaxy, patient and careful. President Taeyang Song addressed the United Nations in a closed session. His words were not broadcast. No reporters were allowed. He spoke for 10 minutes, and when he finished, the vote was unanimous. They think we're weak, Song said quietly. They think grief makes us helpless. They don't understand what they've done. The session ended. Publicly, humanity continued to mourn and withdraw. Ships pulled back from contested territories. Colonies were evacuated in orderly fashion. The Empire watched and saw exactly what they expected. A broken species learning to obey. They didn't see the construction beginning in hidden shipyards throughout the Sol system. They didn't notice the slow movement of agents into Empire space. They didn't understand that humans were a predator species and predators know how to wait. Deho Kim arrived home 3 months after New Sol burned. He reported to Admiral Han personally and asked what happened next. She looked at him with eyes that held no tears, only cold calculation. Now, she said, now we remember. We document every name, every face, every crime. And when the time is right, we teach the Empire what it means to awaken Earth's wrath. The galaxy thought the matter was settled. They were very, very wrong. 3 months after New Sol burned, Earth looked defeated. The news channels showed empty launch pads where colony ships once stood. Families gathered to welcome home evacuees from the disputed territories. Politicians gave speeches about peace and cooperation. To the Galactic Empire watching from distant stars, humanity appeared broken. They were completely wrong. Deep beneath the Rockies, in a bunker built during Earth's old nuclear wars, Admiral Jiwan Han stood before a wall of screens. Each screen showed a different shipyard, hidden in asteroids' belts and dark nebulas across the Sol system. Hundreds of ships were taking shape in the darkness where the Empire couldn't see. How long until the first battle group is ready? Han asked. 18 months for full combat capability, replied her chief engineer. But some ships can deploy earlier if needed. Han nodded. 18 months. Not long enough, but it would have to do. Her sister had died on New Sol. So had her sister's husband and their 3 children. Han carried their photos in her uniform pocket, but she never looked at them. Looking meant feeling, and feeling meant weakness. Right now she needed to be cold steel. President Taeyang Song entered the command center. Despite the anger burning in his chest, he maintained the calm expression that served him well in politics. The Empire believed humans were emotional and impulsive. Let them keep believing it. The Council accepted our withdrawal plan, Song reported. Ambassador Choi convinced them we're terrified and compliant. They're already discussing how to divide our former territories among themselves. Good, Han said. The longer they think we're harmless, the more time we have. Song moved to stand beside her. I spoke with Dr. Kyung Park this morning. She says her projects are ahead of schedule. That brought the first hint of satisfaction to Hans. Dr. Park had spent 15 years proposing weapons research that the military called impractical and excessive. Before New Sol, nobody wanted to fund her work. Now she had unlimited resources and a clear purpose. "I want to see it," Hans said. They took an elevator down another 3 levels, past security checkpoints where guards verified their identities 4 separate times. The research facility sprawled across kilometers of underground space. Dr. Park met them in her main laboratory, looking tired but energized. "Admiral, Mr. President," she greeted them. "You're here to see the children." She led them to a sealed chamber. Through reinforced glass, they could see thousands of small objects floating in zero gravity. Each one was the size of a baseball, covered in solar panels and sensor arrays. "Self-replicating mine drones," Park explained. "Drop them near any resource-rich asteroid and they'll start building copies of themselves. 1 becomes 10, 10 becomes 100, 100 becomes 10,000. Each drone carries a kinetic warhead and basic AI. When they detect an enemy ship, they swarm. The Empire uses energy shields," Song noted. Park smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Shields stop energy weapons. These are just rocks traveling very, very fast. Physics doesn't care about shields," she showed them more. Missiles with learning algorithms that adapted to enemy countermeasures mid-flight. Kinetic kill vehicles that could accelerate to a significant fraction of light speed. Weapons designed by someone who understood that humanity's advantage wasn't advanced technology. It was the willingness to use brutal, efficient methods that elder species considered beneath them. "The Empire evolved on garden worlds," Park said. "They've had peace for so long they forgot what war really means. We're going to remind them." While weapons grew in hidden factories, another operation was unfolding across the galaxy. Intelligence officer Sung Kim coordinated it from a small office that officially didn't exist. His team had spent years identifying positions throughout Empire space where a human could work without attracting attention. Traders, technicians, administrators, teachers, hundreds of ordinary people took ordinary jobs on Empire worlds. They worked hard, learned local languages, made friends. Nobody suspected them because there was nothing to suspect. They were exactly what they appeared to be. Humans trying to make a living after their colonies were closed. Except they were also gathering information, learning security procedures, mapping infrastructure, making careful notes about power grids, water systems, communication networks, and most importantly, they were patient. "How many assets do we have in place?" Admiral Han asked during one of Sung's briefings. 473 active agent, Sung reported. Another 200 in training. Most have been embedded for over a year. The Empire doesn't even know we're there. When we activate them, they won't all survive, Sung said quietly. They know that. They volunteered anyway. Han studied the map showing agent positions scattered across 24 worlds. Each point of light represented someone willing to die for Earth's revenge. She thought about her sister's children, 8 and 6 years old. They died holding their mother's hands while their world burned. "Make sure they have everything they need," Han said. The months passed. On Earth and throughout the Sol system, humanity played its role perfectly. Ships withdrew from disputed space on schedule. Diplomats apologized repeatedly for past misunderstandings. Trade continued normally. Earth even sent gifts to various Empire worlds, cultural artifacts, foods, entertainment. The Empire accepted them graciously, satisfied that the primitive humans had learned their place. They didn't notice the patterns. Small things, individually meaningless. A human technician hired at a shipyard on Velos Prime. Another teaching mathematics on Keldon Station. A trader establishing regular supply runs to military outposts. The Empire's psychologists had analyzed humanity extensively. Their reports concluded that humans were aggressive, but lacked patience for long-term planning. Those psychologists had never studied Earth's history. They didn't know about the generation ships that took centuries to reach new stars. They hadn't read about the old wars where humans laid siege to cities for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Patience wasn't a human weakness. It was a hunter's weapon. In month 16, Ambassador Choi visited the Empire's capital world for a formal peace ceremony. He shook hands with the council members, smiled for cameras, and gave a speech about cooperation between species. The Empire's media praised him as a wise leader who understood humanity's proper place in the galactic order. That same day, deep in the outer Sol system, The first battle group completed its trials. 12 warships that didn't exist on any official registry. They carried crews who had trained in secret, studying every Imperial ship design, every tactical doctrine, every weakness in the Empire's military structure. Captain J. Park commanded one of the new stealth frigates. He'd lost his parents on New Sol. Now he stood on the bridge of the Silent Vengeance and waited for orders that would eventually come. Admiral Han visited the fleet before it deployed to its hidden staging areas. She walked the corridors of her new flagship, the New Sol's Fury. The ship was a dreadnought, massive and powerful, built for one purpose, to hurt the Empire badly enough that they'd never forget. "Admiral," one young officer asked her, "what if the Empire tries to negotiate? What if they offer reparations?" Han stopped walking. She turned to face the officer, and her expression made him step back. "They killed 4 million people," she said quietly. "They burned children alive. They turned a paradise into slag and called it the price of defiance. There is no negotiation. There is no forgiveness. There is only what comes next." The officer swallowed hard and nodded. Month 20 arrived. Then month 24. Earth continued its careful act of submission. The Empire grew comfortable with human obedience. They stopped watching the Sol system as carefully. Their fleets patrolled known territories, confident that the human threat had been neutralized before it could develop. On the 3rd anniversary of New Sol's destruction, every Empire world received a transmission. It came through every channel simultaneously, impossible to block or trace. The message was simple. We have not forgotten. We have not forgiven. The storm is coming. The Empire's leaders watched the transmission in confusion. It showed images from New Sol, the burning cities, the dying people, the final messages. Then it showed names, thousands of names scrolling past. Every person who died on New Sol listed alphabetically. The transmission ran for 6 hours. The Empire's military went on high alert. They searched for the source of the transmission, but it came from everywhere and nowhere. Human diplomatic channels remained silent. Ambassador Choi couldn't be reached for comment. Admiral Han watched the Empire's response from her command center. She saw their fleets mobilize, their defenses activate, their leaders demand answers. Good. Let them be afraid. Let them wonder where the attack would come from. Let them feel a fraction of the terror that New Sol's people felt when Imperial ships appeared in their sky. All units, she transmitted to the hidden fleet. Stand by for Phase 2. Make ready for war. The first attack happened on a mining colony called Velos Prime. The Empire used it to build their warships, processing rare minerals that powered their shields and weapons. 3,000 workers operated the facility, most of them from species that had served the Empire for centuries. The explosion started in the refining section at shift change, when the maximum number of people were present. The blast destroyed half the facility and killed 800 workers. Imperial investigators found evidence of sabotage, but the bomb components were common materials available anywhere. They had no suspects. 2 weeks later, a supply convoy vanished between Keldon Station and the inner worlds. 23 cargo ships carrying food, medicine, and equipment simply disappeared. No distress signals, no debris. The Empire sent search teams, but they found nothing except empty space. Then a communications relay went offline. Then another. Power fluctuations disrupted 3 major cities on different worlds. A water treatment plant failed, requiring emergency evacuation of 50,000 people. Each incident was investigated thoroughly. Each investigation found nothing conclusive. The Empire's leadership gathered to discuss the situation. They suspected human involvement but had no proof. The incidents seemed random, affecting different sectors with no apparent pattern. Some council members dismissed it as coincidence. Space was dangerous, and accidents happened. They didn't understand they were being hunted. Commander Minho Kang watched the Empire's confusion from his hidden base in the asteroid belt of a dead system. His ghost fleet consisted of 30 ships, all modified for stealth operations. They moved through space on minimal power, hiding in debris fields and nebulas, striking only when conditions were perfect. Next target, Minho said to his tactical officer, the munitions depot at Sardax. That's deep in Empire space, sir. High security, which is why they won't expect us. The Ghost Fleet had learned to fight the way humanity's ancestors hunted dangerous prey. Study the target. Learn its patterns. Wait for the perfect moment. Strike fast and disappear before the enemy could respond. It was the opposite of the Empire's warfare doctrine. which emphasized large fleets meeting in honorable battle. Captain J. Park's stealth frigate, the Silent Vengeance, had been stalking an Imperial dreadnought for 47 days. The massive warship followed a regular patrol route through 3 systems, checking on border stations and showing the Empire's strength. Its captain probably thought the assignment was boring routine. Jay had mapped every detail. The dreadnought's sensor sweeps followed a predictable pattern with a 5-minute blind spot every 2 hours. The crew changed shifts like clockwork. The ship's shields powered down for exactly 12 minutes during maintenance cycles. Jay documented everything. "Sir, the target is entering the Keldon system," his sensor officer reported. "Begin approach," Jay ordered. Silent running. No active sensors. The Silent Vengeance drifted closer on momentum alone, powered down to look like another piece of space debris. They got within 2 kilometers of the dreadnought without being detected. Jay could see the massive ship through his viewports, close enough to make out individual hull plates. "Deploy the package," he whispered. A small device launched from the frigate's underside, using compressed gas to avoid any energy signature. It drifted toward the dreadnought and attached itself magnetically to the hull near the main reactor housing. Then it went dormant, waiting. The Silent Vengeance slipped away as silently as it had arrived. 3 days later, when the dreadnought was visiting a major station, the device activated. It wasn't a bomb. It was a transmitter that broadcast the ship's security codes and internal communications to every human ship in range. Jay smiled when he received the data dump. The Empire's security was excellent for defending against external attacks, but they'd never considered an enemy patient enough to spend weeks getting close to plant a listening device. Meanwhile, on the Empire's capital world, Agent Somin Ryu was living a quiet life. For 3 years, she'd worked as an administrator for the Municipal Power Authority. She processed paperwork, attended meetings, and made friends with co-workers. Nobody suspected the pleasant human woman who always brought excellent pastries to morning briefings. Somin had access to infrastructure management systems for the entire capital city. She knew which substations powered government buildings, which pipelines carried water to military installations, which communication hubs routed critical data. She knew because it was her job to know. When the signal came from Earth, Somin activated a program she'd been building for months. It didn't destroy anything or cause obvious damage. Instead, it made small changes to load balancing algorithms. Power would fluctuate just enough to strain systems. Water pressure would drop at inconvenient times. Communications would slow during peak hours. The problems were annoying but not critical. Technicians investigated and found minor software glitches, which they fixed. But the glitches kept returning, slightly different each time, forcing the Empire to waste resources on endless troubleshooting. Somin continued her normal routine, bringing pastries and processing paperwork. She had dozens of colleagues throughout the Empire, each one making similar small disruptions. Together, they were creating friction in the Empire's perfect machine. The most important operation was happening in the Empire's shipyards. Junho Nam had worked as a quality inspector for 5 years, rising through the ranks to supervise manufacturing of critical ship components. He was good at his job, maybe too good. The Empire trusted him completely. That trust was about to cost them. Junho made tiny modifications to shield generators being installed on new warships. The changes were invisible to normal inspections and wouldn't affect performance during testing. But in combat conditions under sustained fire, the shields would fail 3% faster than rated specifications. 3% didn't sound like much. In a close battle, it meant everything. Other agents made similar changes across different systems, targeting computers with microsecond delays, hull plating with stress fractures that wouldn't appear for months, reactor cooling systems that would overheat under maximum load. Each flaw was too small to notice individually, but together they would make Imperial ships just slightly less effective than they should be. The Empire started to notice patterns after 6 months of disruptions. Human involvement seemed likely, but how could they prove it? They increased security, conducted loyalty checks, and monitored communications. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. The humans were perfect employees doing their jobs exactly as expected. Frustration grew among the Empire's leadership. They were used to solving problems with overwhelming force, but how did you fight an enemy who wouldn't show themselves? Their psychologists had predicted human behavior based on emotion and impulse. This patient, methodical campaign didn't match any of their models. We should attack Earth directly, one council member suggested. End this before it gets worse. The others hesitated. Earth's defensive fleet had grown significantly in the past 3 years. Intelligence reported extensive shipbuilding, though the numbers seemed exaggerated. Besides, attacking humanity's homeworld might make them martyrs and inspire other younger species to resist. We'll draw them out, the High Commander decided. Increase patrols. Force them to engage our fleet, then we'll destroy them properly. The Imperial fleet began gathering at strategic points throughout their territory. They assembled powerful battle groups designed to hunt down the human raiders and establish dominance through superior firepower. It was exactly what the Empire did best: concentrate strength and crush the enemy in direct combat. Admiral Han received the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. The Empire was doing exactly what she'd expected. They were gathering their forces, pulling ships from patrol duties and defensive positions. They were creating targets. Phase 3 begins now, she ordered. The Ghost Fleet intensified its operations. They hit supply lines, destroyed unmanned stations, and ambushed isolated patrol ships. Each attack was planned to force the Empire to move more ships to defensive positions, spreading their forces even thinner. Captain J. Park used his stolen security codes to infiltrate Imperial communications. He learned fleet movements before they happened, allowing human ships to be somewhere else when enemy forces arrived and appear where they weren't expected. The Empire grew increasingly frustrated. Their ships would arrive at reported attack sites to find nothing. Their supposedly secure communications seemed to leak information. Their new vessels experienced mysterious technical problems. They're making us look foolish, a council member complained during a strategy session. They're primitive raiders, the High Commander insisted. Once we engage their main fleet, this will end quickly. But where was humanity's main fleet? Imperial intelligence reported shipyard activity in the Sol system, but the actual number of ships remained unclear. Sensor data was inconsistent. Some reports claimed dozens of warships, others claimed hundreds. The humans seemed to be hiding their true strength. In truth, humanity had built more ships than the Empire imagined possible. Working in secret facilities throughout the Sol system, using techniques that prioritize speed over elegance, Earth had created a navy purpose-built for one thing: hurting the Empire badly. The ships weren't beautiful like Imperial vessels. They were efficient, practical, and deadly. They carried weapons the Empire had never encountered, designed by Dr. Park's team using principles that elder species considered barbaric. Sir, all battle groups report ready for deployment, Admiral Han's operations officer announced. Han stood on the bridge of the New Sol's Fury, looking at the displays showing her fleet. Hundreds of ships, thousands of crew members, all of them volunteers who remembered what happened to New Sol. All of them ready to teach the Empire what human vengeance meant. Navigation plot course for the Nexus sector, she ordered. The Nexus sector was where the Empire's gathered fleet was waiting, confident they would crush the human raiders when they finally appeared. They were about to get their wish, just not the way they expected. All ships, Han transmitted. This is for New Sol, for everyone we lost, for every child who died afraid. Make them pay. The human fleet powered up and began its journey. Behind them, agents throughout Empire space prepared for final operations. Ahead of them, an enemy who had ruled the galaxy for millennia waited, still believing they understood how this war would end. They were very, very wrong. The Imperial fleet assembled in the Nexus sector looked invincible. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation, their shields shimmering with power, their weapons charged and ready. The sector was a strategic crossroads connecting 5 major Empire worlds, which made it the perfect place to demonstrate overwhelming force. High Commander Velak stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident that this display would end the human problem permanently. The raiders would either flee or be destroyed. Either way, the Empire's superiority would be proven. Sensor readings show energy signatures approaching from the outer system, his tactical officer reported. Multiple contacts. Configuration matches human vessels. Finally, Velak said. How many ships? The officer's tentacles tensed with confusion. 50? No, 100. Commander, the numbers keep increasing. They're dropping out of faster-than-light travel in waves. On the displays, points of light materialized one after another. 10 became 50. 50 became 100. 100 became 200. The human fleet kept coming. far larger than any Imperial intelligence had predicted. Impossible, Velak breathed. Where did they get so many ships? Admiral Jiwan Han stood on the bridge of the New Soul's Fury, watching the Imperial formation. The enemy fleet was impressive, built by a civilization that had perfected warfare over thousands of years. Their ships were larger, their technology more refined, their tactics proven through countless victories. None of that would save them. All ships, battle formation Delta, Han ordered. Deploy drone screens. Prepare the storm. The human fleet arranged itself in patterns that confused Imperial tacticians. Instead of traditional lines or spheres, they formed overlapping clouds with no obvious center. Ships moved independently, their positions constantly shifting. They have no formation discipline, Velak's second officer noted. They're flying like scattered debris. Don't underestimate them, Velak warned. But even he expected this battle to follow conventional patterns. Fleet would meet fleet, shields would clash with weapons, and superior numbers would eventually decide the outcome. Colonel Yuna Shin commanded the first wave of assault carriers. Her ships launched fighter craft that looked nothing like Imperial designs. The small vessels were controlled by pilots using neural interfaces, their brains directly connected to the ship's systems. The Empire considered such technology barbaric. Why would anyone risk damaging their mind by merging it with a machine? Because it made them faster, much faster. The human fighters moved with predatory precision, their reaction times measured in milliseconds rather than seconds. They didn't fly in neat formations. They hunted in packs using tactics learned from studying Earth's ancient wolves and orcas. Engage enemy screens, Yuna ordered. Her fighters swept through the Imperial defensive positions like sharks through a school of fish. The Empire's automated defenses tried to track them, but the targeting computers couldn't match the speed of human neural interfaces. Where Imperial weapons predicted targets would be, human pilots had already moved somewhere else. Velak watched his outer defense grid collapse with growing alarm. The small human fighters shouldn't have been so effective against proper military vessels. But they were everywhere at once, coordinating in ways that seemed impossible. All ships, focus fire on their main fleet, he ordered. Ignore the fighters. Destroy their capital ships. The Imperial fleet's massive weapons opened fire. Energy beams capable of boiling oceans lanced across space toward human warships. This was where the Empire expected to dominate, ship-to-ship combat where size and power mattered most. The first beams struck human shields and deflected. The second wave hit, and went through. What? Velak stared at his displays. Their shields are failing? They weren't failing. The human ships were doing something the Empire had never seen before. They were turning their shields on and off in precise microsecond pulses, timed to the incoming fire. Energy weapons hit when shields were down, passing harmlessly through empty space where ships had been an instant earlier. Kinetic weapons hit shields that suddenly appeared exactly where they needed to be. It was insane. It required processing power and timing that should have been impossible. But humans had designed their ships specifically for this kind of warfare, using AI assistants that pushed computing to its absolute limits. Dr. Kyung Park's weapons began their work. The self-replicating mine drones that had been spreading through the sector for weeks suddenly activated. Thousands of small objects that looked like debris came alive, each one accelerating toward Imperial ships. Deploy countermeasures, Velak ordered. Energy fields swept space, destroying the drones by hundreds. But for every one destroyed, 3 more appeared. The drones didn't care about survival. They just kept coming, overwhelming point defenses through sheer numbers. The first one impacted an Imperial cruiser's hull. It was just a rock, but it was moving at 16 kilometers per second. The kinetic energy punched through shields designed for energy weapons and tore a hole in the ship's side. Then another hit, and another. Shields aren't stopping them, the tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Velak could see that. Captain Daeho Kim commanded a battlecruiser now, having earned his position through 3 years of preparation. His ship, the Remembrance, carried a special payload, a broadcast system powerful enough to transmit across the entire battlespace. Begin the transmission, he ordered. Every Imperial ship's communications suddenly filled with a voice reading names. Daeho had loaded every single name from New Seoul into the system. All 4,300,000 people who died when the Empire decided to make an example of a defenseless world. Park Min-soo, age 6. Kim Hana, age 34. Lee Young-ho, age 42. Choi Min-ji, age 51. The names kept coming, one after another, while human weapons tore into the Imperial fleet. Valak tried to block the transmission, but it came through every frequency simultaneously. "Turn it off," he shouted. "We can't, sir. It's penetrating all our systems," the names continued. Each one a person who had died in the orbital bombardment, each one a reason why humanity had built this fleet, trained these crews, and come to the Nexus sector to deliver vengeance. The battle became a demonstration of two completely different philosophies of warfare. The Empire fought with honor, expecting their enemies to meet them in glorious combat. Humanity fought to win, using every advantage their cruel history had taught them. Human ships launched swarm missiles that learned from each defensive measure and adapted. They deployed kinetic kill vehicles that accelerated to relativistic speeds, turning simple mass into devastating weapons. They used AI-guided systems that the Empire considered unethical, but were devastatingly effective. Colonel Yuna's fighters targeted Imperial command ships specifically, ignoring military protocol that said you fought from the outside in. Why waste time on escorts when you could kill the commanders directly? Her pilots took terrible losses, but each command ship they destroyed threw entire Imperial battle groups into confusion. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 3rd Fleet," Belek's communications officer reported. "The 7th is requesting permission to withdraw. The 9th report, no withdrawals." Belek cut him off. "We have superior numbers. We just need to—" An explosion rocked the flagship. One of Dr. Park's mine drones had slipped through the defenses and struck the main reactor housing. Damage control teams scrambled, but the ship's power fluctuated wildly. Admiral Han watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Empire's fleet was breaking apart, not because human ships were individually superior, but because humanity fought without rules. They struck at weak points, ignored honor, and used weapons designed purely for killing efficiency. "Target their command flagship," she ordered. "Concentrate all fire." 20 human ships focused their weapons on Valak's vessel. Energy beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds struck from multiple vectors simultaneously. The Imperial shields held for almost 5 seconds before collapsing under the coordinated assault. Valak felt his ship dying around him. Emergency alerts screamed from every station. The hull was breaching in dozens of places. Life support was failing. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. The Empire had superior technology, more experience, better training, but they'd never fought an enemy this ruthless, this patient, this willing to use every brutal technique that evolution and history had taught them. "All ships," Valak transmitted on the emergency channel. "Withdraw from the Nexus sector. Fall back to defensive positions." The Imperial fleet broke. Ships that had never retreated before fled the battlefield, pursued by human fighters and harried by mine drones. The Empire lost 73 ships in the battle. Another 100 were damaged badly enough to require months of repairs. The human fleet held position, watching their enemies run. They'd lost ships too, 41 vessels and over 6,000 crew members. But they'd proven something the galaxy would never forget. Admiral Han stood in silence as the tactical displays cleared. Around her, the crew waited for orders. She thought about her sister's children, who died afraid and alone when their world burned. She thought about the 4 million names that were still broadcasting across the sector. "Set course for Imperial core space," she ordered quietly. "We're not done." Her communications officer looked uncertain. "Admiral, if we invade their territory—" "They invaded ours," Han said. "They destroyed New Sol without warning, without mercy, without hesitation. Now they learn what that costs." The human fleet began moving deeper into Empire space. Behind them, the Nexus sector was littered with debris from what would become known as humanity's warning shot. The real war was just beginning. The human fleet stopped at the edge of the Empire's core systems. Admiral Ji-won Han could have continued. Her ships had momentum, her crews were ready, and the Empire's defenses were in chaos. She could have burned their worlds the way they burned New Sol. Instead, she waited. On the bridge of the New Sol's fury, Han studied the tactical displays showing Imperial worlds ahead. Billions of people lived there. Most of them had nothing to do with the decision to destroy humanity's colony. Children played in those cities the same way children once played on New Sol before the fire came. "Admiral," her tactical officer said quietly, "we have firing solutions on their orbital stations." "Say the word." Han didn't answer immediately. She thought about the photos in her pocket. Her sister's family, smiling at a birthday party 2 months before they died. She'd carried those photos through 3 years of planning, through the battle at Nexus Sector, through everything that brought her to this moment. "Stand down, weapons," she said finally. "Maintain defensive positions only." Confused looks passed between the bridge crew. They'd come here for revenge. They'd lost friends and family in the battle. The Empire deserved to burn the same way New Sol burned. "Send a message to the Imperial Council," Han continued. "Tell them we're ready to discuss terms." 3 hours later, a response came through. The Empire wanted to negotiate. Their fleet was broken, their shipyards compromised by sabotage, and they faced an enemy who had proven willing to use weapons and tactics they couldn't defend against. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Empire was afraid. President Taiyang Song arrived from Earth with a delegation that included Ambassador Yun Choi. Song had maintained his calm, diplomatic face throughout the war, but when he stepped onto Han's flagship, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "You stopped," Song said. "It wasn't a question." "I stopped," Han confirmed. "We made our point, did we? Some people back home think we should finish what we started. Make sure the Empire can never threaten us again." Han walked with Song to the observation deck, where they could see the Imperial worlds hanging in space ahead of them. Lights twinkled on their surfaces. Cities full of people going about their lives, probably terrified about what the humans would do next. "We could destroy them," Han said. "Our weapons could turn those worlds into slag in hours. It would be justice for New Sol. But then we'd be exactly what they thought we were. Monsters. Primitives who solve problems with violence." Han touched the photos in her pocket. "My sister wouldn't want her children's deaths to justify more children dying." Song nodded slowly. "So we negotiate." The peace talks happened on a neutral station with representatives from both sides meeting in a room designed to symbolize equality. The Empire sent their High Council, still shaken from their military defeat. Earth sent Song, Ambassador Choi, and Admiral Han. The Empire's lead negotiator spoke first. His species had ruled for millennia, and the arrogance showed even now. "You have proven yourselves capable warriors. We acknowledge this. We propose a return to previous territorial arrangements with minor adjustments." "No," Song said simply. "Then what do you want?" Song leaned forward. "First, full reparations for New Sol. Every credit spent rebuilding that world comes from your treasury. Second, you cede all disputed territories to human control. Third, your military submits to independent oversight for the next 50 years. Fourth, Earth gets a permanent seat on the Galactic Council with veto power equal to any elder species." The negotiator's expression showed shock. "These terms are excessive. You cannot expect it. You destroyed an entire world." Ambassador Choi interrupted. 4,300,000 people. You didn't target military bases or government facilities. You killed farmers and teachers and children who had nothing to do with territorial disputes. You did it to make a point. That was a regrettable necessity." "No," Han said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was cold steel. "It was mass murder. You could have negotiated. You could have imposed sanctions. You could have used 1,000 different options. Instead, you chose to show the young species what happens when they don't obey." She stood up, and despite being physically smaller than most of the Empire's representatives, her presence dominated the room. "We could finish this war," Han continued. "Our fleet sits outside your core worlds right now. We have weapons you can't defend against. We know your security systems, your communication codes, your weaknesses. We could burn your worlds the same way you burned ours." Silence filled the room. "But we won't," Han said, "because we're better than that. Because our dead wouldn't want us to create more victims. But you need to understand something very clearly. Humanity is not weak because we choose mercy. We're strong enough to choose mercy." The negotiations continued for 6 days. The Empire tried to reduce the terms, to maintain some dignity, to preserve their image as the galaxy's rulers. Earth's delegation didn't budge. On the 7th day, the Empire accepted. The treaty was signed in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. Younger species watched in amazement as humanity, a civilization barely 3 centuries into space travel, forced the Elder Empire to accept their terms. The message was clear. The old order was changing. Back on Earth, reactions were mixed. Some celebrated the victory. Others protested that humanity should have gone further. should have destroyed the empire completely. Memorial services for the battle's dead mixed with victory parades in a confusing blend of grief and triumph. Boyong Li stood at the new memorial on New Seoul. The world was being rebuilt, paid for by empire reparations. Terraforming teams worked to restore the atmosphere. Engineers planned new cities that would rise where the old ones had burned. The memorial itself was a wall of black stone, 5 kilometers long, with every name etched in letters that would last 10,000 years. Boyong found her husband's name and her children's names. She placed flowers there as she did every week. Admiral Han came to the memorial sometimes, though she tried to visit when no one else was around. Today she found Boyong there. "Admiral," Boyong said, "they tell me you stopped the fleet. That you could have destroyed the empire but chose not to." "I did. Thank you." Han looked at her in surprise. "You don't think we should have made them pay more?" Boyong touched her children's names on the wall. "My husband sent me a message before he died. He said to tell the children he loved them. He didn't say anything about revenge. He just wanted them to know he loved them." She paused. "If we'd burned more worlds, killed more families, it wouldn't bring him back. It would just create more people like me." They stood together in silence, 2 women who had lost everything to the same war, thinking about what came next. Across the galaxy, the changes began. Human ships patrolled the disputed territories now, working alongside species who had lived under empire rule for generations. Some of those species were relieved to have a new power that seemed less interested in domination and more interested in ensuring everyone could live safely. Dr. Kyung Park returned to research, though now her work focused on defense rather than weapons. She'd proven that humanity could build terrible things when necessary. Now she wanted to prove they could build protection instead. Captain Dae-ho Kim took command of a new exploration vessel. There were still stars to visit, worlds to discover, and species to meet. The war was over, but humanity's journey was just beginning. Agent Soman Ryu stayed on the Empire's capital world, though now she worked openly as Earth's cultural liaison. She brought the same pastries to meetings, but now everyone knew who she really was. Some of her old co-workers were angry at the deception. Others admitted they understood why it was necessary. The young generation growing up after the war knew a different galaxy than their parents. They learned about New Seoul in school, about the 4 million who died in the war that followed. But they also learned about the choice Admiral Han made, the decision to stop when victory was possible, but not necessary. Some humans and Empire citizens began working together on New Seoul's reconstruction. They planted gardens in soil that had been molten glass 3 years earlier. They built schools where children from multiple species could learn together. It was awkward at first, full of distrust and old anger, but slowly, carefully, it began to work. Admiral Han watched these developments from Earth, where she'd retired from military service. President Song had offered her a position on the new Galactic Council, but she'd refused. She'd done what needed to be done. Now it was time for others to build what came next. On the 5th anniversary of New Seoul's destruction, a ceremony was held at the memorial. Representatives from Earth and the Empire both attended. Some protesters showed up, angry that the Empire was allowed to participate. Others brought flowers and left them at the wall, mixing human traditions with those of other species. Han attended quietly, standing in the back of the crowd. She watched children, both human and Empire species, playing near the memorial while their parents talked. The kids didn't understand the war yet. To them, the wall was just part of their world, as natural as the rebuilt cities and terraformed valleys. Maybe that was how it should be. Let the next generation grow up knowing what happened but not carrying the same anger. Let them build something better than what came before. Boyong Li spoke at the ceremony. She talked about her husband and children, about what she'd lost and about what she'd learned. "The Empire took everything from me," she said. "For a long time, I wanted them to suffer the same way I suffered. But suffering doesn't honor the dead. Building something better honors them, proving that we can be more than our worst moments, that honors them." She paused, looking at the memorial wall. "My children died on this world. Now children from Earth and the Empire play together here. That's not justice. Justice would be having my family back. But it's something. It's a future where maybe no other parent has to stand at a wall reading their children's names." The ceremony ended. People placed flowers, spoke prayers in different languages, and slowly departed. Han stayed until almost everyone was gone, then walked to the wall and found her sister's family's names. I stopped, she told them. I could have burned their worlds, but I stopped. I hope that was right. I hope you would understand. The wind whispered through New Sol's new forests, carrying the scent of growing things. Somewhere in the distance, children laughed. The galaxy had changed. The Empire would never again have the unchallenged power they once held. Younger species had seen that the old order could be defeated, but humanity had proven something more important than military strength. They'd proven they could choose mercy even when vengeance was possible. They'd shown that being strong enough to destroy your enemies meant being strong enough not to, when the choice mattered most. The memorial wall stood silent under two suns, holding 4 million names, a reminder of what was lost, what was fought for, and what was ultimately chosen instead. The storm had passed. What grew in its wake was still taking shape, still uncertain, still fragile, but it was growing, and perhaps in time it would become something the dead could be proud of. Han touched her sister's name one last time, then turned and walked away. Behind her, New Sol continued its slow return to life, a world rising from ashes to prove that endings could also be beginnings.